Hello and welcome to Biggest I Ever Had with Dan and Dave. This week the format's going to be slightly different, and it's completely nothing to do with the fact that we miscalculated the number of episodes that we actually needed for this season. What we'll be doing is we'll be talking to our friend Sean Powell about the state of the music industry, how COVID is impacting on that, and also just some general music chit-chat. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, give us a rating if you're listening on Podbean or one of the podcasting services, and I'll leave a link to Sean's podcast in the description below.
I was trying to look at slightly current music news that isn't super specific or about somebody being a sexual predator. Coachella and Glastonbury have been cancelled, so I thought we could touch upon that. That was a shame.
Yeah.
So
not enormously surprising though.
Not enormously surprising. When do you think they'll return? Big gigs. I'm not talking about small indoor. I'm talking festivals.
Maybe the year after.
Do you think next year?
The trouble is, though, stuff like Glastonbury, that's like a year of prep. So they can't even do the prep, can they? Because they can't gather. So it takes months to build it, I imagine. So I wasn't surprised at all they didn't do it.
Well, they're kind of like worldwide events, so even if the situation in England improves significantly, I don't know if they'd be able to have something like Glastonbury, where you have hundreds of thousands of people coming from all over the world. Because I doubt we're ahead on vaccines and we're pretty shit. So I doubt anywhere else is going to do anything near as much as we have.
Because there was one other thing in the news the last week. Did you see the thing with Andy Burnham, the mayor of Manchester? He said that the music industry had a responsibility to protect smaller venues which are under the threat of financial ruin. So basically, things like the O2 Arena is not going to go under, but smaller venues in Bristol, for example, or the Cheese and Grain in Frome, and what he proposed was a new levy. He likened it to his own role in the formation of the Football Foundation, which I don't know if you know what that is, but basically big football clubs, like your Manchester United, have to give a certain percentage of their profits to smaller grassroots football. So somewhere like Frome Town FC, and I don't know if they're part of the scheme, but somewhere like that, a small football club will get money directly from the bigger clubs through this scheme, basically saying okay, we're going to have a tiered system right here. If you're going to be at the top making shitloads of money, it needs to filter down. That was established in 2000, and pretty much everyone has said has been a resounding success. Most towns do still have a grassroots football team, even if they're, not doing fantastically financially. It's still there. What do you think? Would it work? Even without COVID, I think one statistic I found said an average of 25 music venues, or what were counted as music venues, a week were shutting in the UK.
There does seem to be a thing of, for some reason, it is very hard for music venues to make money anyway. I don't know if it's PRS or something. There's a large amount of it being gouged out, shared around other, not the venue. I can't sort of go into much of the Cheese and Grain and all stuff I know about that place, but from working there, I think they do a pretty good job of keeping that place open, and I think it's been hit or miss for a while, to be honest, before COVID. So I can see why lots of other venues would shut. But then, on the flip side, there's just this enormous groundswell of support for them. If it was in the news tomorrow that the Cheese and Grain was going to shut immediately, I just think a lot of people in our town just wouldn't accept that. They would organise to do something about it. So, but then obviously maybe some of those venues don't have that. They don't I suppose if they're in cities, it's different because there'll always be another venue somewhere down the road, won't there? Yeah.
I just wonder why they're, you said about the money going round, but is it just that people aren't going to gigs, or I
don't think so.
What is it? Yeah, because every time
really busy before, it was pretty busy when I was working there, and it got a lot busier after I left.
remember talking to a promoter, and it was quite a busy night, and she said to me oh yeah, we've lost a bit tonight, but it's not been too bad. And I was there's 500 people here, and she was yeah, but it was minimum 550 for us to break even.
There is that,
and I'm that's an insane amount of people. You've got 500 people to go out on a Saturday night to pay 30 quid a ticket. Or I think that gig was 20 quid a ticket. But that's still a lot of people paying a significant amount of money, and you're still not making a profit.
Yeah.
How? I know the overheads. I'm aware that putting on a gig isn't just turning on the electrics and that's it. You know, the security you've got to be paid, you need the insurance, you need this, that, and the other, and everybody takes their cut. But, like, is there something that they could do to make sure venues do keep going? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not posing this as like, I think they should do that. I mean, I'm genuinely would like to know. Like, if any listeners right there, like, work in the music industry and know the answers to these questions, like, let us know. You know, is there a way in which things could be done that would be better? You know, because it seems strange that it seems to be like every single week I read an NME legendary music venue, where like the first place that such and such band ever played and where, you know, this band was signed has shut after 36 years. And I mean, at the moment there's COVID, so it's more not that it's okay, that you'd hope there'd be more support for them, but.
It's like the middle ground's being squeezed out of the market, because if you can fill like 550 people in the Cheese and Grain, you can probably fill like 1,000 people in a bigger venue. So you're going to go to the bigger venue, play there, get more money. All of these small, medium-sized concert areas are being just beaten. There's a big step, right? Because if we put a band together now, we wouldn't be able to get a gig at the Cheese and Grain, and no one would go to it anyway. So there's no step up for smaller artists in that way, and the bigger artists don't want to come down to that level.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think there's a lot more that venues themselves can be doing. I think there's a lot more than just going to like a website where it's an agency and going, I'm going to book this X, Y, Z, and hopefully I'll sell the tickets. I think that they could be more proactive in putting things together. And I think the Cheese and Grain does do some stuff that is proactive. But a lot of places don't. A lot of places, they just have someone who doesn't know what they're doing booking acts that they don't know anything about.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely the thing for me, is there seems to be like no support network for people on the way up.
Yeah.
It's like either you're a big name and like just your name being on the poster is selling tickets, or you're somebody on the way down. There's no like, oh, these people will be really big in 5 years' time. There's none of that, which I don't know if maybe my perception of it was that was the case like 25 years ago, but it feels like the days of saying like, oh, I saw them, like every like popular band from like the last 40 years, you talk to somebody and they go like, oh yeah, I saw them in a club in East London to like 200 people back in like 1986. Like, oh, I saw Simply Red play in like 1989. Yeah, they were supporting like the Happy Mondays at the Manchester Forum. There was only about 300. None of those stories seem to exist for modern artists. Like, nobody seems to say like, oh yeah, I saw Dua Lipa the other, like before she was big, playing just, and I'm sure they do smaller gigs. But what I'm saying is, it just seems a lot less common. You know, it feels like when I talk to people, they always have, like older people, always have those stories of like, oh yeah, I remember when I saw, you know, this person at this venue. Has that just gone, or is just the perception of it changed? I don't know.
There does seem to be quite a big middle that's just not really there anymore. Like whenever I think of like a band like Joy Division, who nowadays they're regarded as this kind of like uber iconic band that inspired loads of people, and you kind of assume that they would be like giants at the time, but they really weren't. They just went around and played shithole venues all over Europe for like 2-3 years, if that, and probably didn't make any money doing it. Well, they probably were making something of a living. They had other jobs, but like it was worth doing. But I remember working at the Cheese and Grain, and we put on these sort of like punk nights once or twice a week for free, and we really did have to like pull people in to go and see it. Like we kind of begging people, whereas you can. I don't think Joy Division ever struggled to find an audience. Like, they could just turn up in venues as a supporting thing, or just on a, you know, here's some new bands this week from our city. Like, and people would just pay however much, a few quid or something, and have a night out there. I don't think that really exists anymore. You're paying loads of money to see Elton John, or you're paying, you're basically paying to help your friend's band out. You know? And there's nothing really in the middle. Well, there is, but you know, not that much.
Yeah. I think it seems strange to me as well, because it feels, certainly from an outside perspective, the only way you can make money in the music industry now is to tour. Like, you're not going to be making it from streams, you're not going to be making it from record sales. You know, the only way you're going to, like, break even is by turning up to a gig. And then, like, a lot of bands I've spoken to, it's like, yeah, we lose money on coming here. even though we've like sold 200 tickets, but we make money off the fact that like of those 200 people, 20 of them will buy a t-shirt.
Yeah.
You know, like that's where you now make money is, okay, we've not made a huge amount, but if we do like 5 gigs in a week, that earns us enough that we can just about live. So you'd think that there'd be more of a support network for artists, because they're not going to like put out a single, or very few people put out a single, it gets ridiculously successful and they make loads of cash.
Yeah.
You know, you only, 99% of artists are only going to be making any sort of living by going out and hustling and doing gigs, which is why it seems strange to me that it's like, not only is it the worst time, again, this is all an outside perspective, so I don't actually know what I'm talking about, and I'll hold my hands up to that, but not only is it a terrible time to ever make any money from somebody just listening to your music, it seems like a really terrible time to go out there and perform your music, because there's also no like there's no support from the industry.
No.
And the music industry has been growing over the last 10 years. 2020 was one of the biggest years for the music industry, but the problem is, it's like saying the UK economy is like fantastic and growing, yeah, for a very small amount of people at the top.
So that's another thing. I get the impression there's like a top level of musicians who are absolutely raking it in, which, they should be. I mean, a lot of them have been doing it for a long time and they know what they're doing. But like, I don't know, I don't really have much of an insight of like the layers beneath that. But you seem to like make no money, then you make some, and then you make like billions somehow. Like I don't really understand how that system works, how the business model works, really. Like, there's no progression. So if Elton John dies tomorrow, like, who is the next Elton John going to be? Because surely they would. Ed
Sheeran.
Well, yeah, but then he's another one of those top level people who he doesn't even have to do anything and he makes money.
Who takes his place is the question. Well, we've talked before on the episodes about how corrupt the whole radio play system is.
Yeah.
There was a DJ this week that got called out for it. Yeah, I can't remember his name, but he was doing pay for play, which we've talked about in... God, I can't remember. Was it the Survivor episode?
Yeah, we did.
Payola. Yeah, I can't remember which episode, but we've talked before about payola and pay, and apparently it's still going on. And you can get why, because like if people don't go out there and like really, it's basically a lottery.
Yeah,
and that's how the music industry feels. Is like there are lots of like I've heard artists and bands that I've gone, this is really good, this is better than anything in the charts.
Yeah.
Why is it not getting successful? And it's like, well, because it's a lottery.
Yeah. And the weirdest thing is, like, now with the internet, it's so much easier to find whatever genre of music that you're interested in, but somehow people still tend to gravitate towards the bigger artists. Like, it should be a lot easier for people to find like specific styles of music that they're into and then hone in on lesser known bands. But does that happen? I don't think it happens.
Sean, I'll ask you first. Like, from an outside perspective, how corrupt do you think? I mean, the music industry has always been corrupt, but it not only feels like corrupt, it feels like incredibly like weighted against a very few individuals at the top being okay. But how does that? In what way do you think that's going on?
I mean, I guess you've got to pass like corrupt from, like you said, just sort of unfair, basically. I mean, I would say corrupt is like the pay for play stuff, which is just obviously, that's beyond weighted against. That's just sort of, that shouldn't happen anyway. But like, yeah, like we were talking earlier about how there just seems to be this enormous disparity between people at the top and anyone even kind of not that far beneath them, really. Like, so, but the bad side of that really is that top crop of people who have built up the, I mean, they've benefited basically from 40 years of, admittedly a corrupt music business, but one in which they could get their stuff played. There were radio stations that millions of people still listened to, and millions of people still watched Top of the Pops, and there was kind of a ladder you could climb. Whereas now, even though it's more democratic because of the internet, it's, I'd say, far harder to get noticed in a way, because you're just in a sea of people. So
there's a lot of competition at the bottom, and there's pretty much no competition at the top.
Yeah. Which I would say is not conducive to being sustainable. I'm not even sure I don't even think that the people at the top are to blame, really. It would be a mixture of, like I said, they put the years in, and they've probably got an entire army of people around them who are getting a chunk of that, and they refuse to have anything less. So it's a sort of self-feeding system. But I don't know. I maybe I'm just nostalgic for like the days when you could just sort of turn on the TV and see a new band or hear it on the radio, and it kind of made it, like it matters. Like you'd have John Peel or something, but then that was a lottery because it was what he liked. So in a way, it's always been kind of unfair.
Is it? Do you think it's maybe part that like the internet has given us too much choice? That because before, like you said, John Peel. What new record were you buying? Well, whatever John Peel that week said.
Basically, yeah.
Or you were watching. Was it Tony Wilson? He used to have one on Granada, where that's where bands like the Happy Mondays and Joy Division and things. That's where bands like that they came up because they would be on his. I mean, also he was their manager, so it was again corruption.
Corruption, yeah.
But do you ever watch like Sunday Brunch? They will occasionally weirdly show like maybe like 20 seconds of a music video in between the ad breaks.
Yes, I have noticed that.
And every now and then, I weirdly will end up going, oh, that sounds catchy. And I will end up looking up the song. And I have like a few songs on like playlists that I have discovered just from Sunday Brunch, which is weird. But I guess, like, I wonder how much that actually impacts a person's career. Just that little tiny bit of exposure.
I also like whenever that happens, because the people who host that, I think one of them's like an ex-football commentator and the other one's like a chef. So both of them are like, that was great, I guess. Moving on. It's just so awkward.
That was a
song. They just haven't
song.
really said that well.
Yeah, I've never quite understood why they do that. I'm not complaining. I'm trying to think ways I discover music. Like, I never like suggestions. I'm, like, adverse to, like, when Spotify tells me... Well, I don't listen to Spotify. I use Apple Music. When Apple Music suggests things for me to listen to. Another thing that Apple Music and Spotify and things are terrible at is they create, like, a feedback loop. So say you start listening to, like, I don't know, the Jackson 5, they will suggest you Michael Jackson. And then they'll suggest you, why don't you listen to the Jackson 5? Like, and you're even like something simple. You're like, well, what about literally every other artist that was on Motown at the time? Like, how has your algorithm so basic that? And I feel like if they created a better system where it was like, right, here is the Smiths. Here are 10 bands that have all stated the Smiths are a very big influence. And almost like when a new artist promotes something, they literally make it like a lottery. Where, like, this to me is an idea for making it fairer. You as an artist, say you're a brand new band, say the three of us form a band, and we are asked when we create our Spotify profile, name 10 bands that have influenced your music, right? And then it's completely up to you. What you could put 10 bands nobody's ever heard of, but if you're tactical, you'd be like, well, I'm going to put the Beatles, for example. And then when you go and listen to the Beatles, there will be 8 artists at the bottom who are all cleared, like, you know, direct links, like you'd have the Rolling Stones, or, you know, things like, you'd have John Lennon's solo career. But there will be 2 that are like wild cards, and they are artists that have been entered into this lottery. So you as a brand new artist have an opportunity that, and it resets every time somebody goes on the Beatles.
Yeah.
Every time somebody looks up the Beatles music, you scroll down, there's 10 artists. As I said, 8 of them are predetermined by Spotify and Apple Music. 2 of them are randomly selected by people who have said that they are influenced by the Beatles, and it changes every time. Now, the Beatles are probably even now still the biggest band of all time on Spotify. I haven't looked at the figures, but, you know, that's the first thing that comes to mind. The chance of you getting suggested is incredibly low. However, when you go slightly more niche and you go, well, here's this like slight indie band from the 80s that I kind of like, I quite like, you know, not particularly popular, never had any chart success, but I listen to them. And then you scroll down and you see 2 bands who say, well, they actually influenced us. You then might be actually willing to go and listen to it. That's my idea. I might be talking out my arse because I'm now on my second glass of wine. But does that sound like a reasonable suggestion? Because then if you as a new band are stupid enough to put like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and like the biggest artists of all time, you're probably not going to get that many people because you're kind of throwing yourself out there in a sea of people that... But you might actually carve out yourself quite a small niche if you go, okay, here are the lesser known artists that have inspired us. So I'm going to put some of the big names in there, take a chance, but I'm also... And that might actually create a community. I don't know.
In the same way, this technology may not even exist, although you do have what's that thing where if you hear a song in a club and you on your app you just say, what is this
Shazam.
Is there a Shazam or Siri where you can basically put in a song you're listening to and find a song that is like that?
Yes.
So in time signature, style,
it does
and then
exist.
What that band is, and then you go and look at that band, because I want that. Like, not. I mean, I don't really listen to a lot of new music, but like the other day, I wanted to listen to something that was a lot like Tina Turner, Nutbush City Limits, and it just didn't really do it. It was just the Four Tops.
It does exist. I know for a fact it does exist, because if you ever watched the Gadget Show, yeah, they suggested it. This was about 5 years ago now, and I downloaded an app that basically did that, and it was fucking terrible. Okay. Really? So I don't know if a better version of it now exists, but about 5 years ago, I remember downloading one, and then like I remember like listening to like I googled like Iron Maiden, and I'm like, if I listen to an Iron Maiden song, is it going to suggest to me like another heavy metal song? And it was like Iron Maiden. It like listens for a bit, and then it's like something you've never heard of that's completely like I don't know how it worked. The technology just wasn't there. So maybe it's better now. I know something like that did because I tried doing it, and it was just like I think I did it. I gave up because I like made it listen to like a George Michael song, and it suggested, why don't you listen to that exact George Michael song? So I think there's probably a better version of it.
It's probably really hard to do with just audio and like artificial intelligence. They probably have to use like tags and metadata, which is where like Dan's idea about having similar artists would tie into it.
I just find though, like if you the amount of bands I've listened to and then read interviews where they've said, oh, we're like massively influenced by The Cure, and I'm like, really? Like I didn't hear that at all. Do you mean like in your business approach? Or?
As I said, it then becomes a tactical thing where the band, when they're like setting up their Spotify profile, have to be a bit clever about it, because they can go there and go, right, I'm gonna like pick The Cure because we want Cure fans, but then when the person does click on your music, if they listen to it and go, this sounds fucking nothing like The Cure, they're not gonna then like buy a ticket to your concert, and so you've wasted one of your 10, if that makes sense, like one of your 10 suggestions. So you might actually, as a band, sit down and go, who do we actually sound like?
Yeah.
You know, what sort of, like, if we did a concert and we're looking out at 1,000 people and some of them are wearing our band's T-shirts, what other band T-shirts would we want next to it? You know? Like, if you went to a Megadeth concert and you saw people in the front row with Metallica T-shirts, you'd be like, that makes sense. You know? You would be, like, weirded out if you went to, a Megadeth concert and there were people with Christina Aguilera T-shirts at the front. Do you know what I mean? That's what I as a band would be like, right, we sound like this, or this is the kind of music I listen to, and therefore, because majority of people in bands, they tend to make music like the music that they like.
Yes.
You know, it's very rare someone's like, I fucking hate country and western. I'm in a country and western band, but I never listen to it. It's fucking terrible. It's I'm sure there probably are people like that, but it seems quite rare. You'd be like, I hate techno. And Moby's there like, I hate techno. I don't know why I make techno. Is Moby make techno? I don't know. Fuck Moby.
I kind of want to read his books, because I think he does just a list of people he's had sex with, and like half of them have said no.
There's a very good New York Times, very good New York Times article which I can send you, where basically the byline for it was, we read Moby's autobiography, so you don't need to. And they just condense all the stories about him like being an arsehole that he outs himself for. And then like they also rebut a lot of the things. So it's like Natalie Portman comes along and is like, yeah, I spent like an afternoon with him, but I didn't date him for like 6 months, and we definitely didn't have sex. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. It's brilliant. Very rarely do you see celebrities just like called out for their lies so directly.
Yeah. I don't even know what his response was to that. Was he just like, oh, I was doing so much coke, I can't remember.
He decided 90s. He cancelled his book tour. I'm pretty sure that's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good faction. Okay.
So I don't know if like he still then like went on and had success.
Yeah.
But yeah, he cancelled his book tour, so at least something went in.
Yeah.
But yeah, Moby's a strange man. Like, he had a weird thing of like, he talks multiple times about how he used to like just getting his penis out. Like,
yeah, the way he talks about himself, he's like, like he sort of says like, yeah, back in the day I was like a real party animal and I got up to all these hijinks and like all these women and all this drugs and all these booze. And then you see pictures of him from like 30 years ago and he looks even nerdier than he does now, and he wasn't even famous then. And it's like, really? Did you do that?
If you want to see something funny, watch his episode of Cribs.
Oh yes.
Where he's like showing you around Moby's house, and he's like, "This is my telescope." It's like the most boring. But they, like MTV Cribs, they would always for some reason show something 3 times. So it'd be like, "Yo, what's up? It's your boy, Lil Lloyd Banks. This right here, this is where me and all my boys, we play billiards, we play poker. This is the man cave. That's what I say. Right there, we got a gold-plated pool table. Look at that shit." And then it will show it 3 times. Imagine that, but it's Moby, and he's like, "Yeah, this is my house. This is my telescope." And it's like, telescope, and it's got the over-the-top editing, and you're like, it's a fucking telescope. And one of the things that the Cribs used to do is they would say the price of something. So it would say like, "This right here there are only 20 of these Bugattis in the entirety of America, and I own 2 of them." And then it will zoom out, and it'll be like £1 million for each one. $1 million for each one. It'll be like, "This is my telescope," and it'll be like $800. Apparently I could afford to live like Moby if I really wanted. Bizarre. But I didn't expect I'd be slagging off Moby today, but we can add him to the list.
Have you read Morrissey's autobiography?
I read it.
I think it is one of the funniest books I've ever read.
Yeah, I mean, like it opens like a Dickens novel.
Yes.
My favourite. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would give up, he dedicates like 150 pages to the lawsuit, and it's really boring, and a lot of it's just like technical legal stuff. I mean, he's very bitter, and like there's a few bitchy parts that are quite funny, but mostly it's just boring.
I just love how like he will inject as much vitriol into a feud he had with like a kid who nicked his lunch money 45 years ago as like someone who actually stole millions of pounds from him allegedly 10 years ago. Like everyone is the enemy in his world.
He goes on about I remember there being like a whole chapter dedicated to a teacher that threw him in a swimming pool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember reading it and being like, really? A whole chapter dedicated to... He's like, what it would now be... The thing is, because I know how Morrissey speaks, I read the whole book in Morrissey's voice. So I'm there going, what would now be considered child abuse, I guess? Or what you would consider child abuse. And he writes it like Morrissey talks. So it's like lots of, and I guess... And
then the last chapter, if you remember, because it's after the court case, and I think he talks about how immediately after the court, or no, maybe a few years after the court case, the former band members were like down on their luck, so they asked him if he wanted to like reform, and he like enjoyed saying no, basically. And then the entire last chapter, he literally lists just like hundreds of gigs he's done solo and how many fans were in each one. So he's probably gone and researched this. Like, there were 3,000 fans in Mexico City that night in 2004, and that goes on for like a long time. And it's like, he had no editor, basically.
Wow.
Apparently his novels are even worse. I've not read them, but his novels are supposed to be like the worst thing ever, and like I think he won an award for the worst sex scene in literature. Because it's like, imagine Morrissey narrating sex. Like that right there, just that statement, that's all you need to know. So yeah, it's pretty awful from what I've heard. I've not read them. I don't want to give him any more money. I've given Morrissey enough money over the years that I don't want to give him more. Morrissey's a difficult one. How do you feel about like when people you like turn out to be really shitty? When there's somebody that you think they're one thing and then it turns out that they're something completely different. Like, I've had that happen a few times. I always used to love Kevin Spacey. Like, if you'd ask me, like, who's one of your favourite actors? And now it's like, I can't even... Like, and you can't even really say you like their stuff, because you still have to, like, add a caveat to it. I mean, we've already done a podcast on this, but how do you feel about that, Sean?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure I've seen a Kevin Spacey film since that whole thing. And to be honest, it's not like I really don't want to. It's just I kind of I feel like I'm going to watch it in a different way, and it's going to be a film I really enjoyed before, so I kind of don't want to ruin it. I'm trying to think of anyone else like that. I guess I don't really watch. There's a few comedians, like I don't watch Louis C.K. anymore. I haven't watched him for years, actually. But there's not really any musicians, I don't think. I think it's different with music, because I don't know. I mean, if it's a song they're performing and you're just listening to it, I mean, it's not, they're not singing about what the terrible things they're doing in the song, are they? And it was like, I don't know, I'm kind of not too bad with that. Are either of you massive R. Kelly fans anymore?
Dan is. He's got a tattoo. No.
No. I mean, I like his music, but I hadn't listened to it for a while. I did watch Trapped in the Closet a couple of weeks ago, though.
Yeah.
Because it always makes me laugh. So, yeah. I mean, that's his magnum opus, as far as I'm concerned, Trapped in the Closet.
I mean, I'm not a fan of his at all, but I would say I wasn't even that surprised, really. I've always known he's kind of batshit. That shit, but
Yeah, no, that one, and that one was just like, what did you expect, kind of thing. Like, of course he was like that. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I mean, we when we did this with Andy, we had to cut a lot of this, so we'll leave that to one side. This bonus episode's long enough. We'll go down an awkward route and start talking about pedos again. So let's.
Please don't.
It's hard enough for Dave to edit these into something coherent, unless we suddenly go off on a tangent about pedos for an hour. Why does it always end up talking about pedos?
It's your favourite subject, Dan.
It's Dave's buzzword for editing. Oh, there we go. There it is again.
Should we end there?
Thanks for listening to our bonus episode. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Give us a like, rate us, and share it if you enjoyed it a lot. Thanks to our special guest, Sean. We'll leave a link to his podcast in the description, and you should go check that out because it's really funny.
Thank you.
And join us next time when we're going to be going back to the regular schedule and talking about a crappy song.
One thing. If in the comments you've got anything you'd like us to kind of talk about, vaguely music related, please leave a comment on the YouTube and we'll happily address it. We don't get that many comments, but the comments we do get, we always read and we always try to address. So whilst we still don't get that many, it's nice, particularly when it's people I don't know. Thank you, Charlie, for always commenting, because you always comment, and I've never said thank you before. If you've got an idea that you want to hear mine and Dave's stupid opinions on, then please leave it in the comments. And yeah, I think it's a good place to end. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.